Hello and welcome to LearningEngineer.com, where we engineer learning for efficiency. My name is Michael Langdon, and today we're going to talk about phrases and clauses. Now, if you need to find this information in the form of a slide instead of a video, of course you can find these slides at LearningEngineer.com, but you can also find them at www.learningengineer.org, okay? Because Learning Engineer is a nonprofit. So we're going to begin with prepositional phrases. And prepositional phrases and clauses are used in English writing to provide information in a sentence. So in the case of prepositional phrases, they start with a preposition. Then usually after that there's an article like a, an, or the. And then after that is usually a noun or pronoun. So for example, here's a prepositional phrase, around the corner. And you'll notice that prepositional phrases often deal with time or location or property of something, and I'll explain that. Beneath the old oak tree. Under the refrigerator. Of steel. So you can see in each of these cases, here we have the preposition around, we have the preposition beneath, we have the preposition under. All of those are locations. They're telling us where the corner, where on the oak tree, and where on the refrigerator. Now here with of steel, it's a property of it. So when we say something like, the knife is made of steel, the knife possesses the qualities of steel. And then we can have compound prepositional phrases like between you and me. And it's always between you and me and not you and I, because this is what's called the object of the preposition. So you have to always use an object pronoun. And I is a subject pronoun. With Jeff and Mary. Of epoxy glue and crappy plastic. And on Wall Street. Well, on Wall Street is not. So let's cross that out. That's not a compound prepositional phrase. It is a prepositional phrase, just not a compound one. So here are some examples of prepositional phrases and sentences. So we have over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. And here's what that looks like if we highlight the prepositional phrases. And so what you see here is that our sentence, the subject is we, and the verb is go. So our base sentence is we go, and you can tell without the prepositional phrases we really have no idea where we're going. Here's another example. On the corner of 5th and Main near the blue fire hydrant under the old oak tree with the broken branch from the storm, I found a bag of money. And now you can see it with all of the prepositional phrases highlighted. Our base sentence, of course, is I is the subject, found is the verb, and a bag is the object. So without the prepositions, I found a bag. Who cares, right? But once we find out it's a bag of money, then we want to know where. So we can go look ourselves. Whoops. Infinitive phrases. Infinitive phrases are verb phrases that act as something other than a verb. Usually another part of speech, oftentimes an adverb. It's the word to, which can also be a preposition, but when you add an action verb to it, it becomes an infinitive phrase instead of a prepositional phrase. So I want you to put that down. I want to go with you. And then you can also have an infinitive phrase that has to plus an adverb plus an action verb. And these are called split infinitives. So I want to very carefully put that down. So they're telling us how I'm going to put it down. I want to boldly go with you. Next up is participle phrases. Participle phrases are verb phrases that act primarily as adjectives modifying a noun. You should place the participle phrase as close to the noun it is modifying as possible. So usually this is a present participle with some words, and a present participle has an ing ending. So here's our present participle, yelling, and then as loudly as possible, comma, because it comes at the beginning of the sentence. The fireman tried to warn the residents to get back. And you'll notice that the person doing the yelling is the fireman, so it's right next to the fireman. So you make sure you want to put it as close to there as possible. The squirrel, running for its life, escaped the path of the speeding truck. And now you can see this time it's after the noun. It could also go before. You could have running for its life. The squirrel escaped the path of the speeding truck. You'll see that this is wrapped in commas. Okay. The teacher yelled at the child, making her cry. So now in this case, we have a comma here, and usually we don't, in American English, we don't use a lot of commas at the end of sentences. In this case, we do, and that's because this is a logical extension of this. This is the reason, or this is the reason why she's crying, okay? So if you think about it, if you could say the teacher yelled at the child, therefore making her cry, then you would put a comma here. Gerund phrases. Gerund phrases are verb phrases that act primarily as nouns and the subjects of sentences, although it can also be the object of a sentence as well. Usually begins with a present participle, an ing ending. So here we have hitting a child is known to lower his or her IQ. So in this case, hitting a child is the subject of our sentence, that whole phrase. The act of doing this to a child is the subject of our sentence. Running as fast as you can eventually makes you grasp for air. So what eventually makes you gasp for air? Running as fast as you can. Not just running, but running as fast as you can. So the whole phrase is the noun or the subject of the sentence. Mother Teresa wanted to make caring for the dying the focus of her life. Now in this case, this is one of those examples where this is actually the object of the sentence. It's what Mother Teresa wanted. Okay? And to make is an infinitive phrase modifying wanted. Dependent clauses. Dependent clauses are independent clauses that start with a subordinating conjunction, such as because, if, while, before, after, when, since, once, whenever, whatever, as soon as, although, even though, that, which, whichever. There's more. If you want to see a more extensive list of these, just Google subordinating conjunction. So this is a subordinating conjunction plus an independent clause equals a dependent clause. They are called dependent clauses because they depend on the independent clause they are matched with to make sense. So here are some examples. If you go to the store, please pick up some milk and butter. So if is our subordinating conjunction, and as you can see, if we get rid of it, you go to the store, that's a complete sentence. But because we add if to it, a conditional statement, it suddenly becomes dependent on the other part of the sentence. Okay, so if you go to the store, do this, please pick up some milk and butter. Okay, because if you just say to somebody, if you go to the store, they'll be like, yeah, what? Because Jeremy wasn't feeling well, Marlena had to go to the movies alone. And you'll see that when these come at the beginning of a sentence in American English, they get a comma at the end of them. British English, it's just the opposite. There would be no comma. I have a slide on the difference between American and British, so you can look at that. I made it to work today, even though it was a blizzard out there. So in this case, we have our dependent clause at the end of the sentence, and you'll see then there's no comma. Okay. So here we have in the 1950s, schools were closed whenever there was a polio outbreak. So whenever there was a polio outbreak, that's our dependent clause. And again, it's at the end of the sentence, so no comma. Restrictive clauses. Restrictive clause is a group of words that add necessary information to the sentence. If you remove the information from the sentence, it will not make sense. So you do not place commas around restrictive clauses. Generally, as a writer, you kind of have to decide this, what's important, what isn't important. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not so obvious. So you have to kind of make that decision. The big white oak tree that fell in the street and blocked traffic split apart during the last storm. Now I started it with the word that, you'll see. And that is one of those words, it's a subordinating conjunction, and it's always restrictive. So if you're going to use a restrictive clause, you start it with that. You don't always have to start it with that, but if you do start it with that, it means it's a restrictive clause. And I felt that it was important, it would obviously be important to the sentence about the tree that fell in the street and blocked traffic. Anything that blocks traffic is important. The coach who has an undefeated record is very successful. So it helps to add information about an undefeated record in regards to being successful. The car that has all the recalls is the one that crashed into the concrete wall after losing control. So again, very important information. Recalls, crashing, losing control, all of that is pretty much important to this sentence. Non-restrictive clauses. Non-restrictive clause is a group of words that add information to the sentence that is not necessary but does add to the details of the sentence. If you remove the information from the sentence, it will still make sense, so you do place commas around non-restrictive clauses. So here we have the big white oak tree, the one we climbed when we were kids, was uprooted during the last storm. So, that's great that it's the one you climbed on when you were kids, but largely not that important. The coach who owns an old Ford Bronco has a long winning streak. Again, not really that important, and has no real effect on the winning streak. The bicycle, which was made by Trek, has won a lot of races and lost very few. So in this case, we're starting this one with which. So which is the counterpart to that, which is always starts a non-restrictive clause. So if you use which, remember it comes with clauses. Inkscape, which you can find at portableapps.com, is a great program for drawing. Again, another example of the use of which. And that's it for phrases and clauses. If you need any more help, or you want to learn more about them, go to LearningEngineer.com. And if you need to, when you're using the slides, as you can see here, you can change the theme of the slide. So if you don't like this color scheme, if you click white, it'll change it to this. If you click sky, it'll change it to this. And then when you're done, you can just click and go back to the home and start all over again. So again, have a good day. My name is Michael Langdon.